In January, I had set up with two of my close friends just like a monthly prayer night. I said, you guys, I'm feeling kind of convicted that I don't know any lost people, and I feel like there's nothing that feels natural to like, who do I talk to? So then come January of 2025, I get a knock on my door. I had a friend over, it was like 7 p.m. or something, and someone knocks on the door, and I thought, oh, that's kind of odd. And it was two missionaries from the Latter-day Saints church.
We don't make demonstrations out of people. We make dinner for people.
Or bracelets.
Or bracelets. Yes. That's so good.
I remember a few of them would always comment on like, there's such a peace in this home, or you're such a light. Like they would make comments about our space. And so something that kind of sparked in me was just the idea of, I want this to be a safe space for them, because who knows if they have other questions or conversations later on.
Welcome. Season 9 of the podcast, my favorite part of the podcast, where we're interviewing people from our church about the practice. So if you're new around here, or if you have been a part of our church, we're still in the witness practice, where we're talking about how is that going. I just want to encourage you guys. We just had a great Halloween outreach with a lot of folks, but also Christmas is just around the corner, and I think this is another opportunity to invite people to church. And Viking Feast, if you're watching this week of, is literally around the corner. We're on Sunday, so I think it's another great time to be missional. All that to say, we have a returner onto the podcast. We have Emily Heaton. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Yes.
Good to be here.
You were season 1, weren't you?
I think so. It's been a while. Spencer and I were on together.
Yes.
And that was our first.
So this was when you were in the corner with the TVs in the background. That was like New York City, I think, or something.
Yes.
Like we were trying things.
I remember that.
Yeah, and then it was hard because we had one microphone for both of you.
And I'm super quiet.
I think, let's be real, your husband, Spencer.
He's quiet too.
Who's right here, but he can't be seen in the frame. He's super quiet. So really grateful for better audio here and a better producer. So this is the first time I'm not doing the switcher. Okay, so Emily, you're such a joy, and I know a lot of people at our church know you. They obviously experience you every Sunday. You're the one on keyboard and singing. But we do want to talk about the witness practice in particular. And I feel like I'm excited to hear your perspective, because whenever we talk, I realize we have similar upbringings, similar wirings. It's like same Enneagram, same like all of those things. So it's going to be fun to kind of see if we match the same on some of these proclivities as well when it comes to witness. But what's your experience with witnessing, especially before we started to really talk about it as a church family?
I think I was thinking about this as more of a place of conviction for me, because so many of my, if not all of my environments were Christian all since growing up. So grew up in a Christian family. I went to Christian schools all through college. And even like working at Christian environments with Christian staff. So it's just everything has been Christian circles. And so it made it kind of easy to just not be around non-believers. And then I realized like, okay, that's probably not super healthy if I'm needing to be sharing my faith. And I really do enjoy serving the church and serving people that are saved. And there's so much value to that as well. But I just realized, especially as we started talking about the witness practice, where it's like there's no natural places where I am around people who are non-believers. So yeah, I think it was just a place of conviction. So it was just not really a part of my rhythm, I feel like, as a Christian. So
yeah, that's so helpful, because like, so step 1 in our practice was witness. You're even reminding me. So I feel a similar conviction, where I grew up though in public schools. Okay. So I was around non-believers a lot. And so I actually kind of discovered this passion for evangelism at Queen Creek Junior High, where our church meets. I led 56 students through the prayer. Nice. Now, looking back, I'd be like, did you, was that the best gospel presentation? You're closing the deal too soon, whatever. But I still think God was kind and he used it. So I was really passionate about it. But then my story became similar to yours, California Baptist University for college. And then you just like get caught up in church world and church life, and you're having to meet with teams and like caring for people. And you are like, we're serving the body. And I think it's helpful to remember, like Ephesians 4, we all have a different part to play. So sometimes there can be a case where it's like, man, I am like, evangelism's important, but I'm also setting up you too. Like we're setting up the service so that you can invite your non-believing friends to encounter God. But it is fascinating that if you're not around people, all of a sudden you're not very good at it, because that's the whole point. You have to be around non-believers.
Right. And it doesn't, for me, it never felt natural because it's like, I want it to be like a relationship that forms or like a neighbor I meet or something. So we tried. I feel like there's also a couple of just failed attempts or just not being fully obedient to be, like when we first moved into our house, it was like, I think 2 years ago. And we were all like, we're going to meet our neighbors. We're going to like know them. And so I feel like it started off strong. We like, well, actually a neighbor met us. They kind of did the work for us, but we got to know like the people directly around us, but then it was just kind of that, okay, like we don't really see them anymore. And then, so I feel like it kind of fell short there. But yeah, I think it's easy to, at some points it's easy to justify not doing anything. It's like, well, there's nowhere that feels natural, but then it's like, okay, do I need to create a natural space for this then? So,
cause you work from home,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So
with a bunch of Christian clients.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on some of the questions or like how we want to go through this journey, but what has been some helpful ways to actually be with non-believers for you? And like, it's a difficult situation that you are just naturally in.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of started, I think it was the beginning of 2024 where I was kind of feeling, I forget when we started the witness practice itself, but August of that year. Okay. So in January, I had set up with two of my close friends, just like a monthly prayer night. I said, you guys, I'm feeling kind of convicted that I don't know any lost people. And I feel like there's nothing that feels natural to like, who do I talk to? You know? And so I said, if you guys want to join me, I'm just going to like once a month set aside a day and let's just pray for the lost and pray for God to show us people who we should be reaching out to. So off and on throughout that year, all of 2024, we just met monthly and we would pray. We sometimes would do like a prayer walk or we would just pray over the phone or whatever. But, and it's interesting looking back because I'll tell you an experience that happened earlier this year, but it felt like nothing. It was like, there's nothing happening. Like after a year of praying, you know, once a month, I could have prayed more than that, but some more dedicated prayer towards the lost. I feel like it felt like, okay, there's nothing that really makes sense. So then come January of 2025, I get a knock on my door. I had a friend over. It was like 7 p.m. or something. And someone knocks on the door and I thought, oh, that's kind of odd. And it was 2 missionaries from the Latter-day Saints church that were just like wanted to share about the Lord. And I thought, oh, interesting. And so I always tell people, that was kind of like God's softball to me. Like, here, I'll bring them to you.
Nice.
So that just kind of sparked a kind of a cool opportunity that I've had earlier this year to put into practice and to be intentional to say yes. It's easier for me sometimes to say no to those kind of things where it's like, I don't want to deal with the conversation. It's going to be awkward or whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought, I feel like this is what I've been praying for is like, who does God want me to be reaching out to? And so, that just kind of sparked several months of meeting with friends from a different church, a different faith, and like good conversations. And that was how I started putting into practice, I feel like, some of the witness.
I love that. That's you're talking about our previous practice right before of prayer. Mm-hmm. And I really do think that God puts a burden on our hearts first. Yeah. Often the burden comes and then the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think if we lean into that burden, then God honors that and goes, okay, like he gives us that softball. I think that's how God does it.
Right.
You know, like you did quote unquote work for it by praying and asking God. And he's like, okay, great. Your eyes will be aware and open to this interruption when I send it towards you. So I think that's incredible. So how was that experience? 'Cause obviously in that context, it's one thing to have friends where you're like, okay, my goal is to share my faith with them. It's another to realize you're also going to be encountering people where their goal is to literally they left their homes, like their purpose is to share their faith with you. How is it being on that end?
It was interesting. I feel like there was a few things that I wanted to make sure I kept on my mind, which was to not make it some project. Like, okay, they're going to come. Here's my debate points. And I feel like I wanted to be aware. Did I already say it was the Latter-day Saints? I forget.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to be aware, like kind of brush up on some of the things that I know are very different with our beliefs. And then also not be afraid to be like, to respond and say if I agree with something or if, that kind of thing. I feel like there's a lot of hesitation sometimes if it's like I can't give any kind of a sign of approving or anything. It's like, well, there are also people that are well-intentioned. And so I feel like to me, it was just wanting to make sure, again, not to make it a project, but I had more of a desire to make it a relational thing. It was 2 like young girls in their young, like mid-20s, I'm guessing. And so I was like, they seem kind of fun just to like hang out with, like, could we just hang out? And I know they had more of a, like, they were on their mission. And
pretty
so
rigid
it's,
schedule.
yeah, they can't really, it wasn't a ton of wiggle room to do other stuff. But there was one time, I think it was the first day they came, and I noticed one of them had a bracelet on, like just a beaded bracelet. And I had just gotten this huge like bead kit with all like bracelet making stuff. And I was like, if you guys ever want to come like make bracelets, that'd be kind of fun. And so sure enough, they brought another friend and we'd made bracelets one Saturday. So things like that, which we didn't do a ton of that, but that was more enjoyable to me to just have like, we can be friends, we can just talk.
Yeah.
And so that was enjoyable.
So you're naming to the hospitality practice is a really helpful way
That's true,
to be
yeah.
a witness.
It all built up so well. I feel like kudos to you guys for setting up these practices.
Yeah, and I remember, kudos to you, I remember 2024, end of 2023, God was starting to put that burden on you. And so we had met, you were kind of like, hey, how can I witness more? How are we witnessing more?
Yeah.
And in some ways we were saying like, yes, go do it, go pray, that's awesome. But also we're looking at the calendar and it's like, we're building up to this,
Right.
Lord willing, where this will be like so natural. But at the same time, we can't, it's like, no, we're not going to witness until August of 25. Right. That wasn't our heart at all. Oh, my questions turned off. There we go. Yeah, like what were some of the resources you brushed up on? Like how were you able to, like, okay, what are the differences? And I know, we're not going to dive into that too much here. That's like a surprise to you. I didn't prep you to be prepped for that. But what are some examples or voices maybe that were helpful for you? I
had, in one of my high school classes was a class that we learned about different religions. And so that was one that was a little rusty, but it was helpful. And then I actually watched a video. Do you ever watch Preston Perry's videos at all?
Yeah.
So he has a whole video of like recording conversations with two members of Latter-day Saints Church. And so I watched that whole conversation and that was actually very helpful because there were similar questions or topics that they would bring up that were in line with that conversation that I watched. And so I just wanted to be aware and not caught off guard, but also not, like I said, not trying to come with like different points to point out. And so that was something, so I felt prepared, but I was trying to just, I don't know, trust the Holy Spirit to prompt me if it's like, you need to speak up here or you need to just listen, because I didn't want it to feel combative and just like back and forth, So there was a lot of times where I would just listen, and I wouldn't say I agreed if I didn't, but just kind of like listening to their perspective. And then also I think they were very clear on some of the things that I maybe believed differently on. And we had some good debates at some point, but yeah. So
how important for you then is like the ministry of presence? So like the idea of the ministry of presence for those who are listening, it's like, you don't have to have all the answers. Like your goal is to be calm and just like connected with the person, meet them where they're at, and not have to, you're kind of alluding like you're not like looking to do the slam dunk, right, to prove them wrong. Is that what kind of gave you courage, and is that kind of how you like postured yourself as you entered those conversations?
Yeah, I was literally just like praying the whole time they were talking to me. Usually I'd be like, Lord, give me wisdom, just give me discernment. I was just, especially if it was something where it's like, that's so different from what, I believe or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a lot of prayer during the conversation, and then also trying to still pay attention. But I do remember, I forget the exact wording that they would use. They would kind of, a lot of the mission, like they kind of overlapped some of their weeks. So I actually met like probably like 10 or 12,
nice.
Kind of like cycling through different partners that they would partner up with. So, but I remember a few of them would always comment on like, there's such a peace in this home, or you're such a light. Like they would make comments about our space. And so something that kind of sparked in me was just the idea of, I want this to be a safe space for them, because who knows if they have other questions or conversations later on.
Yeah.
I would be so glad if they felt like, oh, Emily was a safe person to talk to, or that was a safe home to, be in. So they talked about some of their unfortunate like other stories of people who would maybe like slam the door or be mean or whatever, and so that was important to me to be like you said, a presence, but also just like literally this space. I wanted to be a comfortable and safe spot for them to be too.
We don't make demonstrations out of people. We make dinner for people.
Or bracelets.
Yes. That's so good. No, I love that. I love that heart. And I want to make sure, that's what I love about the people of Passion Creek. I think that is a heartbeat. Like, we believe in truth and we believe in love, and we know that God made them in his image. I think it's also helpful to remember for your specific context, talking to LDS missionaries, is I imagine in their mind, like especially while they're out on the field, they have like no permission to truly think about what you're saying. Like how awkward, like how do you go home? You know, like how do I stop doing this? So I've had a lot of conversations with people that the moment they get home from their mission, they start to actually think through some of those conversations. So to encourage you, like I think what a joy to think like God is still working in their hearts. You know, we have no idea what's actually processing, but I mean, it makes sense. You kind of like, you kind of, you know, the soils of the heart, you kind of harden your heart off of any opposition. How was that like, also, how difficult was that? Maybe you already said this, but like, did you find it important, as you said, to give them like, you know, like as much as possible, or else how are they going to like give in return and say, you know?
Yes. I wanted to be careful. I remember, because I from what I've studied, I feel like there's two different, even like the person of Jesus is a very different belief, I feel like, between the two religions.
Exactly.
And so it's, what was challenging for me is to like, I believe that about Jesus too. But in my mind, it's like, but I'm thinking of a different Jesus than you're thinking of. I feel, you know, it just, that was kind of challenging because I didn't want to affirm things in a way that would make them, to be confusing. But there were principles and like even just like moral things. We had a lot of conversations about like workspace salvation, which I just found very interesting. I was able to learn and not be, because I feel like sometimes we have our kind of like our key points that we just like, this is what they believe and this is, and it's like they,
caricatures.
Yeah. And then they were actually saying, no, actually we don't believe that. And so it's just being able to, oh, okay, that was a misunderstanding of, you know, so I was trying to be humble in the way that I would receive even like things I knew this about you, but not actually hearing their perspective of what they believed.
Yeah. I guess the last thing that I'll say specifically with that is what's really hard is I think the best, I had a youth pastor growing up that helped us in how to share our faith with LDS. And he always said, we have the same thesaurus, but different dictionary.
Yes.
So like you'll hear all these same words and you're like, are we any different? But then what you were able to do through conversation is like suss out like, oh no, like what do you mean by that? Tell me more. And I think that's when those differences begin to arise. Yeah. So like in that process, like what's been really encouraging but also discouraging as you've been practicing witness?
I think, I mean, overall it can feel quote unquote discouraging if it's like, oh, this wasn't a success. Like they didn't pray the prayer in my house and then leave, you know? So it's like, but I was reminded too of just like, you never know what, even like you said, what God's using to stir in their hearts for later down the road, or just what conversations or questions maybe we'll be planting a seed for later. And even not if I'm the one to even cultivate that later down, if it's someone else maybe. But I was reminded of this kind of in a small, not silly way, but it was just kind of random. There was a time where they had kind of shared, we have to move on essentially. Cause we talked about salvation. That was kind of like, well, like they realized like, we're not really I'm not going to be converting. So they had to kind of move along, and they were so sweet, but they lived in a different neighborhood. So it's not like I wasn't expecting to see them again really after, but my husband and I were on a walk one night. This is like in May, I think. And we're just outside. It's like 9 p.m. at night. We're walking around our neighborhood and we see the two girls, and it had been like weeks since I had seen them the last time. And so we gave them a hug, said hi, you know, it was fun. But to me, that was kind of God reminding me, like, you have no idea, like, what I can coordinate, what I can do. Like, they don't even live here, and they're coming, and you just met on a walk, you know? So to me, it was just kind of this little gentle reminder of God's sovereignty over all of it. And just, he can do whatever he wants. He can, create whatever networking of people to stay in contact with them or whatever. Yeah. So that was kind of cool for me.
To even name what you just said, like to try to give like a practice for people at home. You were out, like you're walking. It's like that even alone just gives God an opportunity to orchestrate those moments. Like for me, there's little things I try to do to be in constant exposure to non-believers, like, you know, being in the front yard rather than the back when we're hanging out, be able to talk to my neighbors on each side and in front, but also like I go to the same coffee shop every day, pretty much every day. And so all the workers know my name. But it's so fun because it's like creating these little moments of conversation. Yeah. And they just kind of, they know who it's easier for me because I'm a pastor. So like, you know, it automatically sets up those combos. But I do think it's really important, you know, they call it the third place. So it's like outside of your home and your work, have these third places where you can just interact with the humans. Yeah. You know, and be able to have genuine connections and genuine opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking of something too that was helpful for me. This kind of goes back to a previous question, but I was trying to not be afraid of saying, actually, this was part of the practice of like going to other people's things, like go to things they invite, that kind of thing. And we went to an Easter production at the LDS church in Mesa, and it was so good. It was very enjoyable. It was fun. And we got to, meet some more people. I actually met someone who lives in my neighborhood. So now I have her number, and it's more of a like possible long-term connection of being able to stay in contact more regularly. But and then there was another like service project night that was at their ward in our neighborhood that I went to. So I feel like for me, it was also just being willing to say yes to things and to not be afraid of like, oh no, I can't, can I step into their church? Like, and so it's like, no, like God can use whatever he wants, So those are two things that were a little out of my comfort zone, but also ended up being like, it's fine. Like just go be with him and it's okay.
Yeah. Did you feel that, like that fear, or like, are people going to worry that I'm converting? Like name some of those things that you realize like, that doesn't have to be an obstacle.
Yeah. I think it's just like, I feel like I didn't feel that way because I knew the people that we had known each other for like months by that point. And so it's not like I'm going to some stranger's, event or something. But I think it is just being open and not being afraid, because I feel like sometimes you can think, oh, is this going to be like I'm endorsing this, or like I'm affirming what they believe, and it's I feel like that just causes unnecessary division and just it's not helpful. So I think understanding that there's wisdom and there's discernment as you enter any place, but you don't have to be afraid to enter those spaces.
One pastor, I forget who said it, but one pastor said, if Jesus was afraid of guilt by association, he would have never left
That's
heaven.
True.
So it is so good to remember. Now, if you're brand new to the faith, you haven't quite figured out the doctrines. Maybe, if you're fuzzy, like maybe don't be already going to other people's faiths and debating,
Right.
So I think there's wisdom, like you already said, wisdom and discernment, but like we should be the type of people who are like, thank you for the invite. I'm going to come. Because back to that practice that we said, why would we ever expect them to come to our stuff if we never go to their stuff? That's awesome. So one of the last questions I want to make sure I asked is like, what have you learned about God or yourself or discipleship to Jesus through these pretty nerve-wracking experiences, right?
I think I've learned that there's always so much more to be learning and growing in, because I've been saved for 30 years now. And this is a weak area for me. Like I have not shared my faith and shared the gospel as much as I should. And so I think there's letting God convict you in those ways of like, it's not like you're all good to go for, you're not set for life kind of a thing. So just being reminded of there's still obedience that you need to participate in, and God's willing to give you those opportunities. I feel like it did to me. Again, the prayer piece was very encouraging, because I think there's also for me some challenges with like prayer and like understanding that relationship with God. So to see that as what felt like an answered prayer a year later was like, okay, like persistent prayer for a year, and then I got this opportunity. So it's not always just an immediate answer, but I think I've learned a lot about obedience to God, and that it's going to be uncomfortable, but I think it's worth it, because you just never know what he's going to use. So those are kind of the main things I've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And that actually fits into this next Sunday from when we upload the podcast. It's going to be about the parable of the persistent widow who just kept praying and praying and praying. And really, that's what we hope a big takeaway for this whole year is fasting on behalf of the lost, praying for them as you're fasting, obviously, and then asking God for the opportunity to witness. Were there ever times when you answered those missionaries with like, I don't know?
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of an exact
example
moment, but I do remember like I wanted that to be, again, back to the like not making it a debate or something, like I have to be strong at all times and I cannot show any weakness. I think it was helpful to feel like trying to let those walls down of like, that's really interesting, or even accepting their extra scripture books that they wanted to give me, and like different books that they use and read. And then they asked me, would you read this? It was the Doctrines and Covenants book that and they're like, read this passage and read this. And so it's like not being afraid to read those things. Again, it goes back to discernment and wisdom of not just diving into that only, but
no, it's so helpful. That's great. Is there anything else you feel like needs to be said, or like an encouragement to people who, because let's be honest, I think most people feel what you're saying. Like, I know I want to do it. I know I should do it. Mm-hmm. It's really terrifying. Yeah, just any kind of like parting encouragements.
I think my two main things would be, we've kind of talked about it, but I remember there was a prayer practice from actually a client of mine who has different, like 4 different prayers for the lost, where it's what you mentioned before, but basically I can hear his voice in my head saying like, if God's not drawing him, you're not going to do anything, so just the idea of like, are you praying for God to be drawing people to himself, because he needs to do that work. And so prayer would be a huge thing, not just thinking that you're going to go off on your own and, have success without the Holy Spirit or God's power behind it. So prayer is huge. And that's something I need to remind myself of, even as, like you mentioned too, after now several of these girls are off their mission and they're home or they're in college or wherever. And I have some of them on Instagram that are friends with me. And so it's been a reminder to me of like, I'm going to keep praying for them and just like, try to stay in contact. So it's not like, so for me, I think I let too much time pass sometimes, where it's like, well, now it feels weird to like reach out because it's been too long. And so, that's another thing I've learned.
I would love to speak into that. Yeah, I have felt that, where I've actually had people come to me and just talk about how like, man, I really needed you this week and you never reached out. And I just remember like, man, I wanted to reach out 3 weeks ago and then I forgot to. And then I felt guilty, and now it's weird. It's getting to the zone of like, man, I should have. And it's just like, I've figured out time and time again, if the Lord like nudges you to reach out, even if it's been 16 months, like answer that call, almost back to my Virgin Islands story of like, Lord, just giving all these excuses. Right. Totally. There's like these weird promptings, and it's like, man, I haven't talked to this guy since high school. Like, do it. Cause you just never know what God's already orchestrating.
Right. There's been times where this isn't really in terms of evangelizing per se, but just even like encouragement to others. Like there was a time where I think I had written like a note to someone. It was a previous coworker of mine. And to me, it was like this, like not a big deal, just a note I left on her desk. And it was like, that note was like the time, it was like the timing. And I thought, oh, wow, I didn't put that much thought in, so it's just God can use, and if you respond to that, God will use our obedience essentially to, So prayer, obedience. Yeah. I think sometimes it's just, and then also not being afraid to get it wrong sometimes, but just being, like I always was thinking when they're in my house, like if I say something that's offensive, I just want to like get ahead of that and say, hey, like I want to be respectful. So I would ask them a question like, is it like, do you call yourself this? And even like little things that I thought, is this going to be offensive if I say this or not? Like I'm going to ask them because I want to learn and I want to grow with them. So that takes, I think, some humility and just being willing to ask questions, really.
Yeah. Why turn up the heat of the room if you don't have to?
Yeah.
Why turn the heat on?
I knew you were going to try and work
Emily. It spits her heat on. Heaton. Oh, my. All right. There it is. I knew it would happen. Emily, you're just such a joy. You bring a ministry of presence to our church. Like, I love how they named, there's like a sense of peace in the home. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because you have worked so hard to cultivate that in your own life, right? Like, you're pursuing Christ. You're seeking, like what I love at our church when we introduce a practice, I know Emily's going to try it out, like she's going to, okay, let's try this thing and let's like train and become like Jesus. So we're so grateful for you. Our church is so much better with you. I will say, I often want to like in the middle of like the announcements be like, can we clap for Emily? Cause she's been up here a long time playing for me as a background while I'm talking. Emily's great, isn't she?
So learn some new tunes.
Yeah. So talk about setting the tone. You do that literally every week. But we're so grateful for you. Before we close, we have to figure out a comment. We need to see what's proof that someone's gone to the very end of this conversation. So what's a random word we can think of? Well,
I may have been tipped off by my husband with a suggestion of Dodgers 2025 World Champs. So let's do Dodgers today.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a Dodger fan by marriage.
I have to respect that. You know what though? What I hate? I've been watching stories about them and they're good humans.
They seem so nice.
And that makes me so mad because I just want them to be villains. Dang
They're
it.
not. They're good people.
Dodger. Didn't you already have that as a comment the last time? Oh my. All right, Dodgers, and then whatever you said after.
Well, let's just give it Dodgers. Keep it simple.
All right,
Maybe
grace
go
and peace,
Dodgers.
guys. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.